A billionaire had given up on hope until the black nanny he hired helped his disabled daughter take her first step and changed all their lives forever. Elias Fontaine had built an empire worth $27 billion, yet nothing in his life frightened him more than the sight of his little daughter, Lena, lying silently in her wheelchair. Doctors said her legs were too weak. Therapists said she might never walk. Everyone in the mansion whispered that hope was pointless. Elias stopped believing too. He buried himself in work, meetings, and money. Anything to escape the pain that even his wealth had limits. Then one morning, a new nanny arrived. A calm woman with warm eyes, braided hair, and a confidence that felt unshakable. Mara Hill. And from the moment she entered the mansion, Lena's world shifted. Mara treated Lena differently from everyone else. No pity, no fear, no hesitation. She spoke to her like she was already strong, like the world had simply forgotten to notice her strength. Every morning, before the sun even reached the tall windows of the billionaire's mansion, Mara would enter Lena's room with a tiny portable speaker and play soft classical music, violins, cellos, gentle piano keys that seemed to settle the air around them. "Good morning, sunshine," she would say, as if Lena waking up was the most precious moment of the day. Most adults tiptoed around the girl, careful not to trigger frustration or fear, but Mara moved with quiet confidence, getting her through stretches, helping her sit upright, brushing her hair as though every strand deserved respect. And at night, instead of the usual silence that had blanketed Lena's room for years, Mara would hum warm lullabies, songs not from Elias' world of privilege, but songs that carried the weight of faraway struggles, the kind that made Lena's eyes flutter like she was remembering something her young brain had tucked away. "Sweet girl," she whispered one evening, gently massaging the stiff muscles in Lena's calves, "your body remembers more than the doctors think. Muscles can forget, but they also wake up. One day, maybe sooner than they believe, you'll surprise yourself." Her voice never shook. She spoke those words like fact, not hope. Elias, standing quietly by the doorway, noticed things others didn't. He saw the way Lena's breathing softened whenever Mara touched her. He saw how the girl leaned ever so slightly toward her, as if drawn toward a warmth she had long been missing. But Elias noticed something else, something Mara tried to hide. When she thought no one was watching, when she carried laundry baskets down the hall or lifted Lena into her chair, Mara walked with a faint, uneven rhythm, a slight limp, subtle but unmistakable. Elias' mind sharpened at the sight. He had hired dozens of experts, therapists, specialized caregivers. None of them had ever moved like someone who knew pain personally. Mara walked as though every step had once been a battle. Every shift of her weight told a quiet story. She stretched her leg whenever she thought she was alone. She massaged her knee when she sat for too long. Sometimes, when she knelt beside Lena's bed to fix her blanket, a shadow of discomfort passed across her face, quickly hidden but not entirely gone. Elias found himself watching her more than he intended, not out of suspicion, but out of a growing, wordless curiosity. Who was she, this woman who slipped into his world like she had always belonged there, yet carried herself like someone who had survived storms no one else could see? One afternoon, he spotted her in the therapy room, alone after Lena had fallen asleep. Mara stood before the large mirror, lifting her right leg slowly, painfully, as though testing how high it could go before her strength gave out. Her jaw clenched, her breath hitched, but she didn't stop. She lifted it again, and again. And again, Elias froze behind the half-open door, struck by the determination in her eyes, eyes that held secrets deeper than her calm smile ever revealed. She wasn't just teaching Lena movement, she was reclaiming her own. That realization hit him harder than he expected. This woman wasn't just kind, she wasn't just skilled. She was fighting her own private war while helping his daughter fight hers. But there was something else too, something he couldn't name yet. The way she touched Lena's arms, tracing the muscles gently, as if reading them like a second language. The way she seemed to know when Lena was overwhelmed before she made a sound. The way she could coax the girl out of silence, not with commands, but with presence. This was not ordinary caregiving. This was lived experience. This was someone who understood brokenness from the inside. That evening, while watching Mara braid Lena's hair, Elias saw it clearly. Her eyes were a battlefield, quiet, steady, but filled with unspoken stories. Stories of falling, stories of rising again, stories of pain she carried without letting it harden her voice. As Lena drifted to sleep, her tiny fingers curled around Mara's hand, refusing to let go even in dreams. And for the first time in years, she slept without the restless twitching that usually came with her neurological condition. Elias leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his chest tightening not with fear but with a question that refused to let him rest. "Who are you, Mara?" A woman who walked like she had once lost the ability. A woman who healed like she had once needed healing. A woman who brought life back into a home that had forgotten what hope felt like. She smiled softly at Lena, brushed a kiss on her forehead, then stood, slowly, carefully, stretching her leg before walking out. And as she passed him in the hallway, her eyes flickered to his, not startled, not afraid, but holding a depth that made him inhale sharply. For a moment he felt it, a truth unspoken, hovering like a whisper between them. She's hiding something, something big, something that will change everything. He watched her limp fade into the shadows of the corridor, and he knew, with a certainty that made his heart beat faster, Mara had survived something, something that had shaped her. Something that connected her to Lena in ways he didn't yet understand, and sooner or later he would find out what. Mara started a secret routine long before the mansion began to stir each day. While the rest of the household slept behind heavy doors and quiet hallways, she moved like a whisper through the early morning shadows, carrying Lena in her arms with the gentleness of someone holding both a child and a fragile hope. The sunroom was their sanctuary, a place where the first rays of dawn filtered through floor-to-ceiling glass and painted the marble tiles in gold. It was the only space in the mansion that felt awake before the world, the only place that didn't judge, didn't question, didn't rush. There in that soft glow, Mara began teaching Lena something doctors had dismissed as impossible: how to feel her legs again. Not grand therapy sessions, not harsh drills or medical devices, just subtle, intentional moments. A slight stretch that coaxed her muscles awake. A soft tap along the side of her knee. A gentle shift of her weight, making her tiny feet press against the warm marble. And as Mara held her steady, Lena would blink in surprise, then giggle. The sound was delicate at first, like something unused and dusty being found again after years of silence. But it was real, it was hers, and it filled the sunroom like a small miracle. "There you go, baby. One little spark at a time," Mara whispered, her voice thick with emotion she never expressed around anyone else. She brushed her knuckles lightly under Lena's chin, smiling when the girl leaned into her touch. Mara always caught those subtle reactions, minuscule shifts most people overlooked. She felt them like echoes from her own past. Every morning their routine grew, first 2 minutes of leg awareness, then 5, then 10. She let Lena feel textures beneath her feet, warm marble, soft blankets, the fuzzy surface of a therapy mat she smuggled into the sunroom without telling anyone. Sometimes she would guide Lena's toes to curl. Other times she would roll a small ball under her foot, letting her sense pressure and motion. It wasn't about walking, not yet. It was about remembering that these legs belonged to her, remembering that her body was not a prison, it was a sleeping friend waiting to wake up. And in those quiet dawn hours, Lena's body began responding in tiny ways no doctor had predicted. A twitch, a shift, a moment of resistance that showed awareness. A spark that lit up Mara's eyes like sunshine, but Mara told no one, not Elias, not the therapists, not the staff who gossiped quietly about the new nanny with too much hope. She kept it all hidden, protecting the progress like a flame in a storm. She knew what would happen if she spoke too soon: pressure, expectations, clinical schedules, charts that measured progress by numbers instead of feelings. And Mara believed in something deeper than numbers. She believed in momentum, in emotion, in trust. Lena trusted her, that was enough. Some mornings, Lena leaned her head onto Mara's shoulder as they stretched, a soft expression on her face, one that said she finally felt seen, felt understood, felt safe. Mara held her a little closer on those days, whispering tiny affirmations into her hair. "You're doing so good. Your body's waking up, Angel. I can feel it." Other mornings were harder. Lena would cry out in frustration when her muscles refused to respond. Her hands would shake. Her breathing would turn shallow fast. But Mara didn't panic. She simply hummed a low melody, rocking her gently, letting Lena feel her heartbeat until the fear melted away. "Even storms help things grow," she murmured. "We'll try again. We always try again." And they did, day after day, dawn after dawn. Soon Lena began anticipating the routine. Her eyes would open before Mara even lifted her from bed, her small hand reaching upward, as if asking, "Are we going?" Mara chuckled every time and whispered, "Of course, baby girl, the sun is waiting." But the most astonishing moment happened one morning when Lena, during a balance exercise, tightened her toes around Mara's finger, completely on her own. The reaction was tiny, almost invisible, but it was voluntary, it was deliberate, it was a spark turning into a flame. Mara froze, her breath catching in her throat. Then she kissed Lena's forehead, whispering, "Oh, my brave girl, you felt that, didn't you?" Lena giggled again, louder this time, as if understanding the significance even if she couldn't express it. Mara's eyes glistened, but she wiped the tears away quickly. She had promised herself she would not break, not until Lena walked, not even a little, and she still didn't tell Elias, not because she didn't trust him, but because she wanted him to witness it with his own eyes, not hear about it from her mouth. She wanted to give him the kind of miracle no parent forgets. So when Elias asked how Lena was doing, Mara simply smiled politely, the same gentle expression she used when hiding truths too precious for casual conversation. "She's doing well," she would say, nothing more, nothing less. Meanwhile, in the sunroom before dawn, life was changing. A child was waking up. A body was remembering. And a woman with secrets in her eyes was planting hope where hopelessness once lived. She didn't want to tell Elias what she was doing. She wanted to show him, because miracles, real ones, were meant to be seen, not explained. One afternoon, Elias returned home earlier than anyone expected. His meeting had ended abruptly, and he stepped out of the car still wrapped in the leftover tension of corporate negotiations. The mansion, as always, greeted him with its familiar silence, polished floors, whispering air vents, and the distant ticking of antique clocks. But today something was different. As he walked through the long marble corridor, he heard it, a sound he hadn't heard in far too long. Laughter. High, soft, stumbling laughter, Lena's laughter. The papers in his hand nearly slipped. His spine straightened as instinct, shock, and raw hope collided inside him. He stood still for a moment, unsure whether he was imagining it. But then he heard it again, lighter this time, mixed with a small squeal. He followed the sound, heart pounding hard enough to echo in his ears, his steps quickening as the laughter grew louder. It led him to the sunroom. The door was half open, sunlight spilling through it like a doorway into another world. He pushed it just enough to see inside, and what he saw nearly brought him to his knees. Mara knelt in front of Lena, her posture steady but soft, her hands gently wrapped around Lena's small ones. The golden afternoon light framed them like a scene from a memory he had never lived but always wished for. Lena wasn't sitting. Lena wasn't lying still. Lena was upright. Her tiny legs trembled violently beneath her, her knees wobbling like thin branches in the wind. Her breaths were thin, shaky, terrified, but determined. She was trying to stand. Elias' mouth parted, but no sound came. His brain couldn't keep up with what his eyes were witnessing. For years, specialists had said words like unlikely, minimal progress, limited mobility, long-term dependence. But here was his daughter, sweat on her brow, fear and courage tangled in her expression, fighting gravity with more heart than anyone her age should ever have to. Mara leaned in, her voice low and steady in a way that made Lena trust her completely. "I'm right here," she whispered. "Don't look down, look at me." Her thumbs stroked the back of Lena's hands in small, grounding circles. Elias felt something inside him crack open. Flood of emotion, hope, shock, disbelief, guilt for not being here earlier rushed through him all at once. His throat tightened so abruptly he had to grip the doorframe to stay steady. Lena's gaze flickered upward. Her wide, uncertain eyes met Mara's calm ones. She whimpered, her legs shaking harder, but she didn't fall. Mara moved closer, supporting without holding her up, giving her enough stability to feel brave, but not enough to take the effort away from her. "That's it, baby," she murmured. "You're stronger than you think." Elias could see the muscles in Lena's legs firing, weak, hesitant, but firing. He could see the tiny shift as her heel pressed harder into the floor. He could see her chin lift just a little, mimicking Mara. And he could see something else too. Lena believed she could do it. That was the miracle. For so long, she hadn't even tried. Not because she didn't want to, but because no one had made her feel safe enough to fail. Elias watched as her knees buckled slightly, her hands tightening around Mara's. She whimpered again, her lower lip trembling. "It's okay," Mara soothed, leaning in, her voice like warm air. "Crying means you're trying, don't you worry, I've got you." Never had Elias seen anyone speak to his daughter like that, with both fierceness and tenderness woven together like the two halves of a promise. Lena's body shook. Her fingers curled harder around Mara's. Her chest rose and fell in fast, frightened breaths. But she didn't sit down, she wouldn't give up. Mara nodded gently at her, as if speaking through silence. "You're safe, keep going." And Lena impossibly did. Another second, then another, To anyone else it would have looked like a small moment. A child almost standing, a body trembling, a nanny whispering encouragement. But to Elias it was the biggest moment of his life. It was a breakthrough no doctor had ever dared promise him, his vision blurred, heat rising behind his eyes. He pressed a fist to his mouth, trying not to make a sound, afraid he'd interrupt the fragile miracle unfolding in front of him. Mara didn't know he was watching. She was fully focused on the child in front of her, her expression filled with pride and gentleness and a deeper emotion Elias couldn't yet name. "You're doing it," Mara whispered. "Look at you, you're doing it." Lena's legs wobbled again, and this time Mara slid one hand behind her back, not lifting her, just catching her enough to prevent a fall. "Easy," she whispered. "I've got you, you can rest now." Lena collapsed forward into Mara's chest with a soft cry, exhausted but not hurt. Mara wrapped her arms around her instantly, holding her, rocking her, whispering praise into her hair. "I'm so proud of you, you did so good, so good." Lena clung to her, panting softly, her eyelids fluttering from pure effort. Mara kissed the top of her head, brushing away the sweat-dampened curls. Elias pressed himself against the wall, his chest heaving as he tried to keep silent. His daughter, his fragile, sweet daughter, had just fought gravity itself, and Mara had guided her through it like she'd been born for this moment. The sunroom felt sacred now. As if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for someone to acknowledge the miracle that had just taken place. Elias wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, unable to look away, unable to speak, unable to move. All he could do was stand there, silent, overwhelmed, watching the woman he had hired turn impossibility into truth right before him. And in that moment, Elias realized something he had never admitted to himself. Mara was not simply caring for Lena. She was changing her, transforming her, awakening something in her that the world had thought was gone forever. And he, helpless, breathless, had just witnessed the beginning of the most beautiful fight he'd ever seen. Lena wobbled, her tiny knees shaking like twigs caught in a storm. Her breath came in small trembling puffs, her chest rising and falling too quickly for comfort. She leaned forward instinctively, searching for the anchor she trusted most. Her fingers gripped Mara's hands, tight, desperate, clinging to them as if they were the only solid thing in a world that kept trying to pull her down. Mara steadied her with a calmness that came from lived experience rather than training. Her thumbs brushed the back of Lena's hands in slow, rhythmic circles that told the little girl without words, "It's okay, you're not alone, I'm here." "You're safe," Mara murmured, her voice low, warm, grounding. "Feel the floor beneath you, let your feet talk to you. Slowly now you've got this, baby girl." Lena whimpered, her eyes wide with effort and uncertainty. Her muscles, unused for far too long, quivered as if deciding whether to obey or retreat back into silence. Mara watched her closely, reading every flicker of emotion on her face, every twitch in her legs. And then something changed, a tiny shift, a spark. Lena's right foot pressed harder into the floor, a movement so small yet so intentional that Mara felt her breath catch. She leaned in just a little, not helping, not holding her up, just being the safe place Lena could fall toward if she needed to. "That's it," Mara whispered, her voice trembling with hope she tried hard to hide. "Let your body remember, one little move, and then one foot slid forward, a half step, hesitant, shaky but real enough to make the air in the sunroom tremble with meaning. Mara's eyes widened, her lips parting in silent shock, but before she could even whisper encouragement, the other foot followed. A second step, the tiniest, most magnificent act of defiance against every limitation the world had placed on her. Lena had taken her first step. Her first real, voluntary step, the kind doctors said might never come, the kind Elias had prayed for on nights he never admitted to crying, the kind Mara had believed in even when she doubted her own strength. Elias gasped. The sound tore out of him so loud, so raw, that Mara spun around instantly. Their eyes met across the golden-lit room. Elias looked like a man struck by lightning, his face pale, his eyes wide, his lips trembling as though his soul had been shaken loose. And then in the span of a heartbeat he shattered, not in the way glass shatters, loud and dramatic, but quietly, completely. His shoulders dropped, his hand pressed against his chest, his eyes filled with tears he was too stunned to blink away. In that single moment, he looked like a man who had been broken for years without realizing it, now suddenly put back together by the smallest feet he had ever loved. He took a step toward them, voice breaking in half. "My God." His breath trembled, and he looked between Mara and his daughter as if trying to make sense of a miracle that his heart had always wanted, but his mind had never dared to imagine. She walked. The words were barely a whisper. A confession, a prayer, a thank you. Mara held Lena gently against her chest as the girl collapsed into her arms, exhausted from the monumental effort. Lena's tiny fists clutched at Mara's shirt, her breath shivering as she buried her face in the warm space between Mara's collarbone and shoulder. Mara didn't look proud of herself. She didn't beam or brag or even flinch under the magnitude of the moment. Instead, she smiled down at Lena with a softness that could have healed the whole world. Then she looked up at Elias, really looked at him. The billionaire who had everything except the one thing he needed most, hope. And Mara, with all her quiet strength and hidden scars, gave him the gentlest truth he'd ever heard. She always could, she said softly, brushing a curl from Lena's forehead. She just needed someone to believe she wasn't broken. Elias covered his mouth with a trembling hand, tears streaming freely now. He shook his head slowly, disbelief, awe, gratitude all swirling inside him like a storm he couldn't control. He looked at Mara as though she were something otherworldly, something rare and impossible, a miracle wearing human skin. Mara didn't hold his gaze for long. Instead, she kissed the top of Lena's head and whispered, "You did it, baby, that was all you." And Lena, still catching her breath, still trembling from effort, smiled against her shoulder. A small smile, a tired smile, but real. And one day, Elias would remember this moment as the day magic returned to his life, delivered by a child who refused to quit, and a nanny with secrets in her eyes, who believed in miracles long before anyone else dared to. That night, after the mansion had quieted and the sun had melted into a deep indigo sky, Elias wandered through the dim hallways with a heart too full to rest. The house felt different now, softer, lighter, as if the very walls had witnessed Lena's step and were still humming with the echo of it. He searched for Mara, not to question her work, not to pry, but because something inside him felt pulled toward her, toward the mystery and strength she carried with such quiet grace. He found her in the garden. She sat alone on a stone bench beneath the sprawling branches of an old oak tree, the moonlight painting pale silver highlights across her cheekbones. Her posture was calm, but her eyes looked far away, as though she were replaying memories she rarely touched. Elias stepped forward slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Mara," she turned, surprise flickering softly in her eyes before her expression settled back into its usual composed warmth. "Mr. Vale," she said gently, "you're up late." "Couldn't sleep," he admitted, his voice low. "Not after today." Mara's gaze drifted downward, as though she too was still absorbing the miracle that had unfolded between them in the sunroom. He hesitated, unsure how to begin, then sat on the opposite side of the bench, giving her space while still staying close enough to show he wasn't there out of formality. He was there because he needed to understand. "How did you know she could walk?" He asked quietly, not an accusation, just a father trying to grasp how hope had found its way back into his home. Mara didn't speak at first. Instead, she let the silence breathe between them, her fingers brushing absently over the garden's soft moss-covered edge. Finally, she took a slow, steady breath. "Because I've been her," she said. Her voice was soft, too soft for someone who'd carried battle scars. "What do you mean?" she hesitated. And for a moment, Elias saw something fragile flicker inside her, a memory she kept tucked behind every smile, every confident instruction, every gentle touch. Then she told him. "I lost the use of my legs after a car accident," she said quietly. "I was 16, angry, scared, broken in ways I didn't know how to name." She swallowed hard, her eyes glimmering with reflections of things she didn't often share. "Doctors said I'd never stand again. They said my spine was too damaged, my nerves too unresponsive. They told my mother to prepare for a wheelchair for life." Elias felt his stomach twist. It was the last thing he expected. Mara wasn't just compassionate, she was familiar with pain at a depth most people never reached. "But they were wrong," he whispered. Mara shook her head slowly. "Not wrong, just limited." Her fingers drifted to her knee. She pressed it gently, almost subconsciously, the way she always did during moments of vulnerability. "One therapist refused to give up on me," she said. "A man named Javier. He was stubborn, relentless. He made me try things I hated, made me stand when I thought I'd fall, made me move when I wanted to give up." Her voice wavered, then steadied. "He told me something once, something I never forgot." Elias leaned in slightly, listening. "Your body listens to whoever speaks to it with the most conviction," she quoted softly. "Fear or belief," she exhaled shakily. "And he believed in me, even when I didn't, even when I screamed at him, even when I cried through every exercise." Her eyes clouded, her memories as vivid as fresh photographs. I walk today because someone fought for every inch of movement I have. Someone told me I wasn't broken. Someone refused to see me as less just because I moved differently. She looked at Elias then, really looked, her gaze raw and unshielded, letting him see the truth behind every calm smile she'd ever given. So when I looked at your daughter, I didn't see a diagnosis. I saw a child who had been taught to believe she couldn't try. Her touch grazed her knee again, softer this time. I wanted to be that someone for her, she whispered. The someone Javier was for me. Elias felt something shift in him, slow, powerful, irreversible. He stared at Mara not as an employer, not as a billionaire accustomed to polished competence, but as a man humbled by the sheer strength of another human being. He saw her differently now, not just the steady caregiver, not just the woman who seemed to always know what Lena needed, but someone who had rebuilt herself from the ground up, someone who carried pain quietly, without bitterness, without theatrics. Someone who transformed her scars into tools for healing others. Mara, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion he couldn't fully explain. She looked up, the moonlight catching the warmth in her eyes. I don't admire you because of what you did today, he said quietly. It's not just your work. Her brows lifted slightly surprised. It's your courage, he continued. Your strength, your heart, the kind of heart people can't teach or fake. Mara blinked, stunned for a moment. Praise wasn't new to her, but this wasn't praise. This was recognition, understanding, respect of the deepest kind, the kind she had never sought but always deserved. A soft breeze rustled through the garden, scattering jasmine's scent around them. And in that moment, beneath the moonlit branches, two people who had both been broken, one physically, one emotionally, found something quietly life-changing in each other, understanding, respect, and the beginning of a bond that neither of them saw coming. In the weeks that followed, Lena went from one step to three, to walking across an entire room with Mara cheering wildly. The mansion transformed from silent halls to the sound of tiny footsteps chasing dreams. Elias began spending more time at home. More time laughing. More time being a father. One evening, he said to Mara, "You didn't just teach my daughter to walk. You taught me how to live again." Mara smiled, eyes shining. "She changed everything, not me. I just showed her the door. She chose to run through it." Months later, Lena walked confidently into her first day of school. Elias held her hand. Mara walked on her other side. To the world, they looked like a billionaire, a nanny, and a child. But to each other, they were a family learned not by blood, but by healing, belief, and love that money could never buy.